Welcome into Fast Break Friday for the weekend of January 24th through the 26th, the year 2025. This is Vol Society's exclusive weekend college basketball preview show featuring our Vols, the Lady Vols, the SEC, and games across the nation. It is cold outside right here in the middle of winter. And, of course, college basketball is still hot and heavy, especially in the SEC. As the temperature is getting turned up as these games go on, even though the temperature outside is not getting any warmer. But hopefully these basketball games that we're going to preview will get y'all nice and toasty as we dive into another weekend of college basketball. We begin with our beloved Tennessee Volunteers. Huge game coming up this Saturday night, 8:30 ESPN. As our beloved Tennessee Volunteers heads to the jungle to take on the number one team in the nation, the Auburn Tigers. Tennessee did not drop in the polls this week. They remained at number 6 after the loss to Vanderbilt in Nashville last week. Tennessee ended up picking up a win Tuesday against Mississippi State. And now a huge showdown. College game day will be in town this Saturday from Neville Arena. Can Chaz Lanier continue that hot streak? He had over 20 points in the win Tuesday night against Mississippi State. Can he continue that progression? We know what Zakai Ziegler can bring. We know what, kind of the rest of the supporting cast will do. Who can also maybe take that next step up for Tennessee? And Igor Milichik, could he go off? Felix Acapara. Jordan Gainey, who's probably in my opinion, the SEC sixth man of the year, doing a nice job coming off the bench. Meanwhile, for Auburn, they have, despite having a major injury in Janai Broom being out the last 2 or 3 games, they're still playing at a high level. Chad Baker-Bizarra has really stepped up for the Auburn Tigers, averaging 13 points per game. This is a dangerous Auburn team. And Tennessee, can they shut down that high-octane Auburn offense? Because I'm afraid if Tennessee, one of their weaknesses that I see is if they get into a shooting matchup with a high-scoring team, I don't know if they can kind of hang in there. So Tennessee's going to have to really clamp on the defense. Tennessee has, struggled on the road a little bit this year, even though they do have a couple of road wins at Illinois back in December and against Texas in SEC play, but they've already dropped, a road game at Vanderbilt, and here's another one on the horizon with Auburn. So we'll find out what happens. Game of the week in college basketball, number 6 Tennessee and number 1 Auburn. Our beloved Lady Vols will be back at the Thompson-Boling Arena Monday night with a huge showdown as number 2 South Carolina will come into town. Now, by the time this game rolls around, South Carolina could be the number 1 team in the nation, could be still at number 2. Of course, we'll talk about that number 1 team in the nation as we preview the rest of the games in this video. But, obviously the Kim Caldwell expected to have her baby pretty soon. She may have already have it by the time this video is released. But a big time showdown for the Lady Vols as they get ready to take on their big rival in the last few years, especially since Don Staley's been the head coach at South Carolina. What can this team bring? The Tennessee has, in the 3 losses, they have, I think, had like a combined of like 5 or 6 points, I believe. It's been very close margin of losses for the most part. They're not being blown out. They're hanging in there, and just a heartbreaking weekend for both the men's and women's, losing at Vanderbilt. So we shall see what happens as South Carolina comes into town to take on the Lady Vols Monday night, 7 o'clock ESPN2. All right, let's go across the SEC. 1 o'clock SEC Network from Colonial Life Arena in Columbia, South Carolina. 14th ranked Mississippi State, fresh off the loss to Tennessee, takes on South Carolina. South Carolina, or let me talk about Mississippi State first. They had their worst shooting performance so far this season in Knoxville. So now they will head on the road, like I said, for the second game in a row, taking on South Carolina. South Carolina led by a really good player in Colin Murray Boyles for the Gamecocks. Can we see another, could Mississippi State get back on the winning ways, or will we see another upset? We'll find out Saturday. 2:30 ESPN from Memorial Gym in Nashville, Tennessee. Number 9 Kentucky comes into town to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. We already saw Vanderbilt pull a huge upset win at home last Saturday, defeating Tennessee. Can they have that Memorial magic 2 weeks in a row as the Cats come into town? For Kentucky, Lamont Butler, one of the best guards in the SEC, really controls the offense for Mark Pope's team. Meanwhile for Vandy, like I said, can they just pull it again? We shall see. Saturday, 2:30 ESPN. 2:30 on ESPN2, maybe right next to your cable package or TV provider. The battle in the Lone Star State, 13th ranked Texas A&M, heading to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns. In this one, Zurich Phelps and Wade Taylor IV leads the way for the Aggies, doing a nice job for Buzz Williams' group. Meanwhile for Texas, still making that adjustment in SEC play. They passed with flying colors in college football, and we'll find out here in a couple of months how they do with baseball. But for basketball, it's been a bit of a learning curve. Started out slow in SEC play, finally got their first SEC win against Oklahoma. And Texas, I don't think they had a game last Saturday. They do have a weekday game. But now, like I said, taking on at Texas A&M, they've already played each other once, which was a win by the Aggies. So can the Longhorns get that upset or revenge win, and obviously an upset win in this case? We will find out. 3:30 SEC Network from the O'Connell Center in Gainesville, the 5th-ranked Florida Gators, one of the hot teams in the SEC. Of course, there's a lot of hot teams out there in the Southeastern Conference, taking on their rivals, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia cracked the top 25 last week, had a couple losses along the way, slid back out, but still a very talented team for Mike White's group. Of course, Mike White, going back to Gainesville, which he's been back, I think, a couple of times at this point, so doesn't have the same emotions, if you will. But meanwhile for Florida, Walter Clayton Jr. Right now, I think is the front runner for SEC Player of the Year with Janiah Broome's injury. Should be a fun little race between that, and who knows, maybe Chaz Lanier, if he can get going for Tennessee, can get in that conversation too. But should be a fun little matchup. Two rivals, the Dogs and the Gators. 6 o'clock, SEC Network, a top 25 showdown. 16th ranked Ole Miss taking on number 22 Missouri. We already saw Ole Miss go on the road last week against Mississippi State, which I believe the Bulls ended up winning that one. So now they're taking on Missouri. Missouri coming off a win against Arkansas, now in the top 25. We'll see if they can kind of hold on to there. Dennis Gaines has got a really good group going right now. Mark Mitchell leads the way for Mizzou. Ole Miss has Sean Badula. Nice little game here. 6 o'clock SEC Network from the Mizzou Arena. 8:30 SEC Network. 4th-ranked Alabama taking on LSU from Coleman Coliseum in Tuscaloosa. Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, what can you say about him? A talented team for Nate Oates' group. Hanging in the top 5, a very deep SEC conference, obviously, and welcoming in a rival in LSU. We'll see what happens in this one. Probably going to be a big Alabama win, but anything can happen. And then 8:30 on ESPN2, Saturday night, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Boy, you talk about a rough first season for John Calipari and his group. A lot of high hopes. I guess, from Arkansas's perspective, they thought they were going to be in that top 10, at least top 25 in a very deep SEC, and, just struggling out of the gates. A talented group with Boogie Flan and Jonas Anu and Big Z and, Basil, and it's just not clicking for Coach Cal. And, even the Arkansas fans are getting restless, and It's probably going to be kind of a morbid atmosphere at Bud Walton Arena, which is normally one of the toughest and most rowdiest arenas in college basketball. But Oklahoma comes into town. One time Oklahoma undefeated, and they have kind of like Texas making that learning curve to the SEC play. We'll see what happens. It's probably going to be kind of a sleepy game, but a game that both teams need to get a win. All right, let's go across the nation. We'll get you out of here. We head to Fog Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, Kansas, a big-time matchup in the Big 12. 7th-ranked Houston taking on number 12, Kansas, 6:30 ESPN. LJ Cryer leads the way for Houston. Hunter Dickinson leads the way for Kansas. Going to be a nice heavyweight showdown. For the most part, like I said, Houston and Iowa State, to me, are the two top teams in the Big 12. Kansas is still in the thick of things. They just, took some couple of conference losses early on. But, the Big 12, a pretty underrated basketball conference this year with Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Arizona State's played pretty decent. West Virginia has pulled some upsets and now cracked in the top 25. This is going to be, a 8-9 team league going into the NCAA tournament. Should be a lot of fun to kind of follow along with this conference, but good start so far. Should have mentioned this game before I mentioned this Houston-Kansas game. We do have a game tonight on Fox at 8 o'clock in the Big Ten, 21st-ranked Michigan at number 11, Purdue for Mackey Arena in West Lafayette. Dusty May, former Florida Atlantic head coach, now at Michigan, doing a really nice job coaching the Wolverines into the top 25. And for Purdue, with a team that's normally in the top 25 year in and year out with Matt Painter's group, just doing a nice job. Michigan's got Vladislav Golden and Trey Donaldson, and for Purdue, Trey Kaufman and Wren leads for the Boilermakers. But a little Friday night hoops for you as Michigan takes on Purdue. Sunday on ESPN2, 1 o'clock, a battle in the American Conference. UAB taking on Memphis. There are 4 teams in the American Conference that are in first place right now with a 4-1 conference record. These 2 teams right here, UAB, Memphis, along with Temple and North Texas. And Tulane is only a half a game out with a 4-2 conference record. But this game will take place at the FedEx Forum in Memphis, Tennessee. For UAB, Yaxel Lindenberg leads the way for Andy Kennedy's group. And for Penny Hardaway's group, P.J. Haggerty averaging 22 points per game for the Memphis Tigers. But a couple of rivals in the American Conference, going back to Conference USA. UAB and Memphis, 2 programs that have a pretty rich pedigree in basketball. And then we'll wrap up with the women. Little women's action on Sunday, 2 o'clock, NBC. The number 1 team in the nation, the UCLA Bruins, heading to College Park to take on the Maryland Terrapins. I think it's called the Xfinity Arena now. But yeah, for UCLA, doing a good job. Kayla, I think her name is Kayla Burtz, if I'm not mistaken, leads the way for UCLA. And Maryland, usually a top 10 team in women's basketball, or top 15. So obviously, if you're South Carolina, you're definitely going to be rooting for Maryland, because if UCLA falls Sunday, then South Carolina will become the new number 1 team in the nation. If not, they'll still hang on at number 2. But it's been a fun women's season so far. I know you don't have the star power last year with a Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese, but you still got some pretty solid teams in women's game. UCLA, USC, both in the top 5. South Carolina, LSU from the SEC. Maryland's usually a contender. And then the ACC is usually pretty stout with like a Georgia Tech and a Duke and North Carolina and just many others. But I want to shout out the women's game, still holding their own a year later after kind of that magical season with the superstars, and still doing their thing. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Fast Break Friday. Enjoy the hoops this weekend. And, we'll talk to y'all right back here next week as we continue our preview of the weekend college basketball games. Until next time, this is David Morrison from Ball Society. And as always,